If you had lived on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee 2,000 years ago, there was one place you learned never to go, a hillside of tombs above the water, where a man lived who was not really a man anymore. Everyone in the region knew him. They had tried to chain him, hand and foot, and he had snapped the iron like thread. Now he lived out there among the dead, naked, night and day, screaming across the hills and cutting himself with stones. Whatever was in that man was stronger than rope, stronger than iron, stronger than anyone who had ever tried to hold him down. But the strangest moment of this story is still coming. In a moment, the thing inside this man makes one bizarre request, and Jesus grants it. Then, one morning, a boat came across the water and landed right below those tombs. And the screaming thing came tearing down the hillside toward the men who had just stepped onto the beach. But it didn't attack. It stopped, and it fell on its face in the sand. And then the thing inside the man did something no demon anywhere else in the entire Bible is shown doing. It started to beg. It begged not to be tortured and not to be sent away to a place it was terrified of. And then came the request. It looked up the hill at a herd of pigs feeding in the distance, and it asked Jesus for permission to go into them. And he said yes. That's the part almost nobody stops on. So why would a legion of demons beg to be sent into a herd of pigs? Why would that be the one thing they wanted? And why on earth would Jesus agree to it? To understand what actually happened on that shore, we have to take this story apart, one strange piece at a time. Let's get into it. To see why this scene is so strange, you have to understand where Jesus just went. Because he didn't stumble into this place by accident. He crossed a border on purpose, and it was a border most Jewish teachers of his day would never have crossed. The Gospels of Mark and Luke both tell it. Jesus tells his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." The other side. On the western shore was Jewish Galilee, home, the villages where he taught and healed. The eastern shore was something else entirely. It was Gentile country, a cluster of Greek and Roman cities the region called the Decapolis, which simply means the 10 cities. Foreign gods, foreign language, foreign law, and, as we're about to see, foreign animals that no faithful Jew was supposed to touch. And we can actually get specific about where this happened, because it's one of the small puzzles scholars have chewed on for centuries. The Gospel manuscripts don't fully agree on the name of the place. Some call it the country of the Gerasenes. Some say the Gadarenes. Others, the Gergesenes. And that isn't just a spelling quibble, because the geography of each one is different. Gerasa was a great Decapolis city, but it sits more than 30 miles inland, nowhere near a lake. Gadara was closer, roughly 6 miles from the shore, and its territory may have stretched down to the water. But there's a third option, a smaller place called Gergesa, sitting right on the eastern shore itself. And this is where it gets interesting, because one detail in the story only works in one kind of location. The text says the pigs ran down a steep bank straight into the sea. For that, you need a cliff or a sharp slope right at the water's edge. And on the eastern shore, near the spot people identified as Gergesa, there is exactly that, a steep hillside dropping almost into the lake. Even an early Christian scholar named Origen, writing in the 3rd century, noticed the problem and argued that the real site had to be that little shoreline place, not the famous inland cities that copyists kept writing in, because those were the names they'd actually heard of. It's a tiny thing, but it tells you this story is pinned to a real, specific piece of ground, a real slope, above real water, where a herd really could go over the edge. And the crossing itself was violent. You probably know the story that comes right before this one, even if you never connected the two. On the way across that lake, a storm came down so suddenly and so hard that seasoned fishermen thought they were going to die while Jesus slept in the back of the boat. He stood up, spoke to the wind and the water, and it went flat calm. Read the Gospels in order, and you notice something. The one time the crossing to this particular shore is attempted, the lake itself seems to rise up to stop it. Whether you read that storm as weather or as something more, The text puts a wall of chaos between Jesus and this shore, and he walks straight through it. So he arrives, and the first thing that meets him is not a welcome at all. Out of the tombs comes the man. Now watch how carefully the text stacks up everything wrong about this encounter, because the layers matter. Start with where the man lives. He lives among the tombs. To the Jewish mind, there was almost nothing more defiling than a grave. The book of Numbers is explicit. Touch a dead body, or even be under the same roof as one, and you were ritually unclean for 7 days. Graveyards were places of impurity you kept your distance from. And this man doesn't visit the tombs. He lives in them. He has made his home inside the single most defiling place in the landscape. Then add the spirit inside him. The text doesn't call it an evil spirit first. It calls it, over and over, an unclean spirit. That's the word Mark keeps using. Not evil, not fearsome. Unclean. The same category as the tombs. So you already have an unclean spirit living in an unclean place. Now add the land. He's standing on gentile soil, which observant Jews already treated as unclean ground. And then, hanging over the whole scene, feeding on the hillside, comes the last layer, a herd of pigs. In the law of Moses, the pig is the signature unclean animal, the one that shows up in Leviticus as the very example of what you must not eat and must not touch. A Jewish region would never have a herd of pigs on its hillsides. Their presence is a flashing sign that says, you are not in Israel anymore. So look at what the gospel writers have built. In one single scene, they have layered up every category of uncleanness their culture had. An unclean spirit in an unclean man, living in unclean tombs on unclean ground, surrounded by unclean animals. It's as if the story is deliberately taking you to the most defiled corner of the entire known world. And into that corner, without hesitating, walks Jesus. That's the point the setting is making before anyone even speaks. This is the one place holiness was never supposed to go, and it went there first. Now, the man himself. And the description is genuinely disturbing, because the writers don't soften it. This is someone in unimaginable torment. He wears no clothes. He hasn't for a long time. He doesn't sleep in a house, only among the graves. People had tried to restrain him again and again for his own safety and for theirs. They bound him with chains and iron shackles on his feet, and every time he tore the chains apart and smashed the shackles to pieces. No one, the text says, was strong enough to subdue him. Not one person, not a group of them. And then the detail that tells you this isn't just violence, it's agony. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. Read that slowly. Whatever had hold of this man was not just making him dangerous to other people. It was driving him to destroy himself. It had him alone, among the dead, gashing his own body with rocks, screaming into the dark every hour of every day and night. This is what the thing inside him wanted for him. Total isolation, constant pain, and a slow march toward death. Hold on to that, because it's going to matter enormously when we get to the pigs. Here is a man that his entire society had given up on. They couldn't heal him, they couldn't hold him, they couldn't even get close to him. So they did the only thing left. They wrote him off and walled him out, and they let the tombs have him. Everyone who had ever loved this man had learned to speak about him in the past tense. And that is the man who is now sprinting down the hillside toward a stranger who just stepped off a boat. Society's most hopeless case, the strongest and most tormented man anyone in that region had ever seen, is running full speed at Jesus. And what happens when he arrives is the strangest negotiation in the Gospels, because the first one to speak isn't the man and it isn't Jesus. The voice that answers comes out of the thing inside him. He runs the whole way down, and then, right in front of Jesus, this uncontrollable man who has snapped iron chains for years drops to his knees and falls on his face. The word the text uses is that he worshipped him or bowed low before him. The strongest man in the region, on the ground, in the dirt, in front of a carpenter from Nazareth. And a voice comes out of him screaming at the top of its lungs, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. Stop on every piece of that, because it's loaded. First, the thing recognizes Jesus instantly. Nobody on that Gentile shore knew who Jesus was. He had never preached there. He'd just arrived. But the Spirit knows him on sight. It knows his name, and it knows his rank. It calls him Son of the Most High God. That title, the Most High God, in Greek hypsistos, is fascinating right here, because it's the exact title that Gentiles and outsiders in the Bible tend to use for the God of Israel. It's the name for God that travels beyond the borders of Israel, so even the words the demon chooses fit the foreign soil it's standing on. And then the second half, do not torment me. Think about how strange that is. This is supposedly the strong one, the thing that has terrorized an entire region, that no chain and no man could subdue. And the instant it's in the presence of Jesus, every trace of threat drains out of it. It's afraid, it's begging not to be hurt. Whatever the balance of power looked like a moment ago, it has completely flipped. The terror of the region is now the one who's terrified. And there's a detail in the way it pleads that's easy to skate past, but it's genuinely striking once you catch it. In Mark's wording, the Spirit doesn't only ask, it says, I adjure you by God, do not torment me. Adjure is a formal word. It's the language of an oath, of a binding spell. It was exactly the kind of formula that ancient exorcists used when they tried to control a demon, invoking a higher power to force the spirit to obey. And here the demon takes that formula and aims it at Jesus. The thing being cast out is trying to bind the one casting it out, using God's own name as the lever. It's the possessed trying to exorcise the exorcist, and it fails completely, which quietly tells you the size of the gap in authority on that beach. The usual tricks, the names, the formulas, the leverage that spirits were believed to hold over people, none of it lands. The demon reaches for its strongest weapon, and it's like reaching for a weapon that was never there. Now comes the exchange, the whole video turns on. Jesus asks it a question. Just 4 words. What is your name? And the answer that comes back is one of the most chilling lines in the Gospels. My name is Legion, it says, for we are many. Legion. Sit with that word, because it is not a random name, and it isn't a demon's personal name at all. Legion was a Roman military term, and everyone in the first century knew exactly what it meant. A legion was the largest unit in the Roman army. A single Roman legion at full strength was somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers, fully armed, fully trained, the most disciplined killing machine the ancient world had ever produced. So when Jesus asks the name and the thing answers Legion, for we are many, it is telling you 2 things at once. It's telling you there is not one spirit in this man, there is an army. And it's telling you that army thinks of itself in the language of the Roman military occupation. And this is where the version you grew up with quietly leaves something out. And I want to walk through it carefully because it's genuinely one of the interpretations scholars take seriously. And it makes this scene hit very differently. Look at the words this passage keeps reaching for. The name is a military unit, Legion. The pigs aren't described as a bunch. They're described using a word for a group on the move. When the spirits enter them, the whole herd charges down the slope. And the Greek verb there is the kind of word you'd use for troops rushing into battle. The land itself, at that very moment in history, was under the boot of the Roman army. For the people living on that shore, the word legion didn't mean something abstract. It meant the soldiers who occupied their country, taxed their families, and could kill them without consequence. Now pay attention to this next detail, because to people living under Rome, it would have changed the entire feel of the scene. One of the Roman legions tied to the occupation of this land, the 10th Legion, the Legio ex Fretenses, carried among its symbols the image of a wild boar, a pig. Their standards and their coins could bear that animal. Now, I have to be honest with you the way this channel always is. Nobody can prove the gospel writers were pointing at that specific legion, and the 10th wasn't permanently stationed in this exact spot on the day this happened, so I'm not going to tell you it's a locked case. But look at what the scene assembles. An occupying army's name, a herd of the very animal a Roman legion used as its emblem, and that whole force of spirits driven down a cliff and drowned in the sea. To a first-century audience living under Rome, that picture would have been impossible to miss. Because there's an older story hiding underneath this one, and every Jewish listener would have felt it. Once before in their scriptures, an enemy army, the mightiest military on earth, chased God's people to the edge of the water, and that army, Pharaoh's army, the chariots and the horsemen of Egypt, was drowned in the sea while the people watched from the shore. The song they sang afterward said the Lord had thrown horse and rider into the sea. Now here, on the shore of another body of water, a force that names itself after an occupying army is sent charging into the water to drown. Whether or not the writers planned every echo, the shape is the same. The oppressor, named like a legion, going down into the deep. That is the picture this scene paints, and it would have meant something electric to people living under the heel of Rome. But set the politics aside for a moment, because underneath the Roman echo there's an even deeper question, and it's the one the title of this video is really asking. This army of spirits is trapped. Jesus has already commanded them to come out of the man. They know they're losing, and in that moment of panic, they don't ask to be spared. They ask for something very specific. They beg not to be sent to one particular place, and then they ask for the pigs. To understand why, we have to talk about the one thing in all of creation that a demon is afraid of. When the spirits realize Jesus is casting them out, they make two desperate requests, and the gospel writers preserve them side by side. Mark says they begged him not to send them out of the country. Luke, telling the same scene, gives you the sharper version. He says they begged Jesus not to command them to go into the abyss. The abyss. In Greek, abyssos. It means the bottomless place, the deep. And in the world of the Bible, the abyss is not a vague idea. It's a specific location, and it is the single thing that terrifies these spirits more than anything Jesus could do to them on that beach. So what is the abyss? Follow the thread through the rest of the Bible and it becomes clear. The abyss is the prison for spiritual beings. It's the holding cell for the powers of darkness, the place where rebellious spirits are locked away until the day of judgment. In the book of Revelation, the abyss is a pit that gets opened and sealed, and demonic forces are released from it and later shut back into it. Its ruler is given a name that means destruction. In the letters near the end of the New Testament, the picture gets even more specific. The letter of 2 Peter says that God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them down and committed them to chains of deepest darkness, to be kept until judgment. The little letter of Jude says almost the same thing. Angels who did not stay within their proper domain are being held in eternal chains in darkness until the great day. And the Bible even gives the ruler of that pit a name. In the book of Revelation, the angel of the abyss is called, in Hebrew, Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon. Both words carry the same meaning: destroyer, destruction. That's the character of the place these spirits are pleading to avoid. A domain of destruction, ruled by destruction, and it's where their kind gets sealed away. There's an even older layer beneath this. In Jewish tradition from the centuries before Jesus, including a widely read book called First Enoch, the story went that a group of rebellious heavenly beings had already been chained deep in the earth, locked in darkness, held there until the final judgment. That's the tradition 2 Peter and Jude are reaching back toward. So by the time these demons meet Jesus on the beach, the picture is well established. There is a prison. Some of their own kind are already inside it, and the rest are living on borrowed time, dreading the day the door swings open for them too. Now hold that word, the deep, up against something you already know. When the ancient Jewish scholars translated their scriptures into Greek, the word they chose for the abyss was the very same word used back in the opening of Genesis, for the deep, the dark, primordial waters over which the Spirit of God moved before creation. The abyss and the deep waters were, in the language of the Bible, almost the same place. The bottomless dark, whether you pictured it as a pit or as an ocean. Keep that in your mind, because it's about to matter far more than the demons realize. Do you see what that means for the demons on the beach? There is a place already prepared where spirits like them are chained in the dark, waiting for the end. And these particular spirits are still out, still loose, still walking around in a man. They are not yet in the pit. And the last thing on earth they want is to be sent there early. That's what the abyss means to them. Not death exactly. Imprisonment. The end of their freedom to roam. The cell door slamming shut ahead of schedule. And that word, early, is the key. Because the Gospel of Matthew hands you the missing piece. Matthew tells this same story, though with one wrinkle worth flagging. Where Mark and Luke describe a single man, Matthew mentions two of them. Mark and Luke seem to lock the camera onto the one who did the talking, the notorious one everyone in the region knew, the way a story naturally centers on its main character. It's the kind of small difference you get between accounts, shaped by real memory, rather than copied from a template, and it reads as honest, not tidy. And in his version, the spirits scream a question at Jesus that Mark and Luke leave out. They shout, "Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Before the time. Read that, and the whole psychology of these creatures snaps into focus. The demons know something. They know there is a time coming, a fixed appointment, a day of judgment when their sentence will be carried out and they will be locked away for good. They know it's coming, and they know they can't stop it. What they're pleading is that it isn't supposed to happen yet, and they're terrified that this man, this son of the Most High God who has just walked onto their shore, has come to drag that day forward and throw them into the pit ahead of schedule. That is the fear driving everything that happens next. And it explains the second half of their strategy, because there's one more thing you have to understand about what these spirits are and what they crave. There's a passage where Jesus describes the behavior of an unclean spirit directly. He says that when an unclean spirit goes out of a person, it passes through waterless places, dry and desolate country, seeking rest and finding none. And because it finds no rest out there in the dry emptiness, it wants to go back into a body. It says, "I will return to my house," the person it came from. Put those two ideas together, and you finally understand the trap the demons are in. To be cast out with no body to enter is torment for them. It means wandering, restless, homeless, through the dry places. And the only alternative on offer looks even worse. The abyss, the pit, the chains in the dark. So they are cornered between two horrors, disembodied wandering on one side and imprisonment on the other. They need a body, any body, anything to avoid being sent into the deep. And that is the exact moment their eyes land on the herd of pigs on the hillside. So the request for the pigs isn't random, and it isn't really about the pigs at all. It's the move of something cornered and desperate. Better an unclean animal than no body at all. Better the hillside than the abyss. The demons are trying to negotiate the least terrible option they can see. But they are about to discover that the option they begged for leads exactly where they were trying not to go. Because between the two things they feared, wandering and the pit, they forgot to be afraid of a third, the water. So let's put the full answer together, because the title question actually has several answers stacked on top of each other, and they all fit at once. Why did the demons ask for the pigs? First, because they needed a body, and the pigs were the only bodies available. We just walked through that. To be cast out with nowhere to go meant restless torment in the dry places, and beyond that, the abyss. The pigs were an escape hatch from both. Second, because pigs fit them. These are unclean spirits, and the pig is the unclean animal. There's a dark logic to it. The most defiled spirits in the region asking to enter the most defiled animal in the region. Like calls to like. If you were an unclean spirit looking for a host on that Gentile hillside, the swine were, in a grim way, the natural home. Third, because of location. Remember Mark's version of their plea. They begged not to be sent out of the country. These spirits seemed tied to that territory, that region, that shore. The pigs let them stay right there, in the land they'd made their own, instead of being driven off it. They were fighting to keep their ground. And fourth, underneath all of it, the abyss. Every one of these choices is really one choice, anything but the pit, anything but being sent into the deep ahead of the time. The pigs were the demons' bet that they could dodge judgment one more time and live to torment another day. So that's why they asked. And that's already the first half of the mystery solved, the half the title of this video is really pointing at. Quick pause here because this is the right moment for it. If you're the kind of person who would rather understand what these strange old texts actually say than just repeat the flannel graph version from Sunday school, subscribe. That's the entire reason this channel exists. Every week I take one story people are sure they already know, and we go back to the original words and the oldest sources to find what's really sitting there on the page. It genuinely helps these deeper readings reach people who've only ever heard the shallow version. All right. But now we hit the harder half of the question, the part that genuinely puzzles people, and it's a fair thing to wrestle with. Why did Jesus say yes? He has absolute authority here. He could have simply sent them to the pit with a word. Instead, he grants the request of a legion of demons. Why would he do that? Now, the text does not sit us down and explain his reasoning. It never does. So anyone who tells you they've got the one certain answer is overselling it. But there are a few readings that make deep sense of the scene, and they don't cancel each other out. Let me lay them out and you can weigh them. The first reading is about proof. Think about what everyone on that shore needed to see. Here is a man that no one could bind, tormented for years, and now, suddenly, he's calm. How would anyone believe he was actually free? How would the man himself believe it? The moment the spirits enter the pigs and the whole herd stampedes off the cliff and drowns, everyone gets to watch the thing leave. The torment that lived in that man becomes visible, external, undeniable, and then it's gone, into the water. The drowning is a receipt. It proves the man is truly empty of them, and it proves just how many there were. The second reading is even more chilling, and it ties back to something I told you to hold on to. Remember what the spirits were doing to the man. Night and day, they drove him to cut himself with stones, to destroy himself, alone among the graves. They wanted him dead. They just couldn't quite finish it, because something in a human being made in God's image resists. So watch what those same spirits do the instant they get control of a body with no such resistance. They immediately drive the entire herd off a cliff to its death. In seconds. That is the demons showing you their true intent in the open. What they did to 2,000 pigs in a moment is exactly what they had been trying to do to that one man for years. The pigs reveal the plan. These spirits are not tenants. They are destroyers, and destruction is the only thing they were ever going to do with a body. I mean, think about that for a second. The one thing the demons proved, the moment they were given the chance, is that they had never wanted anything for that man except his death. Jesus letting them into the pigs didn't cause that. It exposed it. And there's a third layer, the ironic one, and it's the part the demons themselves never saw coming. They begged not to be sent into the abyss, into the deep, and Jesus grants them the pigs. But what do the pigs immediately do? They run straight down the bank and into the depths of the sea, and the water closes over all of them. In the imagination of the ancient world, the deep waters and the abyss were closely linked. The same word world sits behind them, the churning deep, the place of chaos below. So the spirits beg to avoid the deep, and the bodies they chose carry them at a dead run straight into the deep anyway. They negotiated their way out of the pit and landed in the water, which was a doorway to the very thing they feared. Whether the text means they were destroyed or driven out of that region for good or simply outwitted, it leaves you to sit with. But the irony is unmistakable. They asked for the pigs to escape the deep. The pigs took them to the deep. And there's one more thing worth naming before we move on, because it quietly reframes the whole trade. Jesus permitted the loss of an enormous herd, 2,000 animals, to free one single man. One. In the eyes of that region's economy, That was a staggering exchange, a fortune poured out for a nobody from the graveyard. But that ratio is exactly the point. In the math of heaven, that one tormented, naked, self-destroying man was worth more than 2,000 pigs and every coin they stood for. Nobody else on that shore would have made that trade. His own town, as we're about to see, would have made the opposite one in a heartbeat. Jesus makes it without pausing. Whatever else this scene is doing, it's also setting a price. It tells you exactly how much a single ruined human life is worth to the one who just stepped off that boat. More than the whole herd, more than the whole hillside, more than the entire region was willing to pay. Because the story does not end with the pigs going under the water. In some ways, the strangest human moment is still coming. There were people who owned those pigs. There was a whole town downwind of this miracle. And their reaction to a man being set free is one of the saddest things in the Gospels. There were men watching all of this, the herdsmen, the ones whose job it was to tend that herd. They saw the man they'd all feared suddenly calm. They saw the spirits go into the pigs. And they saw their entire herd, around 2,000 animals, thunder down the slope and vanish into the lake. And they did what anyone would do. They ran. They ran to the town and the countryside and told everyone what they had just seen. So the people come out, a crowd of them, streaming out from the town toward the shore to see for themselves. And what they find should have been the best news that region had heard in years. They find the man, the one from the tombs, the one no chain could hold, the terror of the whole district. And he is sitting down. He's clothed. Luke adds the detail that he's sitting at the feet of Jesus, in the posture of a student, a disciple, calm and quiet. And the text uses a beautiful phrase. He was in his right mind. The screaming is gone, the chains are gone, the self-destruction is gone. The man everyone had written off and buried in the past tense is sitting there dressed, sane, present, like anyone's son or brother or neighbor. And here is the gut punch. The text says that when the people saw it, they were afraid. And then, instead of celebrating, instead of falling at Jesus' feet, the whole crowd begins to beg him to leave, to just go. Get back in the boat and get off our shore. And no, I'm not dressing that up for effect. A man has just been rescued from a living death. A human being who was cutting himself with stones in a graveyard is now whole. And the response of his own community is not joy, it's fear, and a request for the source of that healing to please go away. Why? The text lets you sit with it, but the reasons aren't hard to find, and they say something uncomfortable about people. Part of it is raw fear. They have just watched a power at work that they cannot categorize and cannot control. A man who breaks the spirits that no chain could break is, frankly, more frightening than the demoniac was. At least they understood the demoniac. This they did not understand at all, and the unknown terrified them. But there is another reason sitting right there in the story, and it's the one that stings. Look at what it cost them. 2,000 pigs. That's not a minor loss. That's a fortune. That's the livelihood of the herdsmen, the wealth of the owners, the economy of that stretch of shore, gone into the water in under a minute. And the town does the math almost instantly. A man was healed, yes, but the pigs are dead. And when they weigh the two things against each other, a human life restored on one side and their money on the other, they choose the money. They would rather have their pigs back than have this power anywhere near their coast. They look at a miracle, and all they can see is the invoice, which, looking back, is either the most human thing in the world or the most tragic, and honestly, it's both. Here is the whole scene in one bitter picture. The demons wanted the pigs to save themselves, and the town wanted the pigs back so badly that they sent away the one person who could save them too. Everybody in this story, it turns out, is willing to trade something enormous for a herd of swine. And notice the word the gospel writers keep using, because it's doing quiet, devastating work. It's the word beg. The demons begged Jesus. They begged not to go to the abyss. They begged for the pigs. Then the town begs Jesus. They beg him to leave. 3 times the region pleads with the Son of God, and listen to what they plead for. The demons beg to keep tormenting. The town begs to be left alone. Nobody in the whole country asks him to stay. Nobody begs to be healed. Nobody begs him to do more. The greatest goodness the region has ever seen shows up on their shore, and every single request made of it is a request for it to go away or to do less. That is the tragedy sitting underneath the miracle. So Jesus does something he rarely does in the Gospels. He honors the request. He doesn't argue. He doesn't force himself on them. He doesn't call down fire. He turns around and gets back in the boat to leave, exactly as they asked. The people who needed him most have sent him away, and he lets them. It is one of the quietest, most sobering moments in all 4 Gospels. Grace shows up, uninvited and undeserved, does the impossible for the worst-off man in the region, and then is politely asked to leave and goes. But there is one person on that entire shore who does not want him to go. One man out of the whole region who runs toward Jesus instead of away from him. And what Jesus says to that man turns this whole grim story into the beginning of something nobody could have predicted. As Jesus is getting into the boat, the man who used to be Legion comes after him. And he begs. There's that word one more time. But this is the only good begging in the entire story. Everyone else on that shore begged Jesus to leave, or to spare them, or to let them keep hurting. This man begs for the one thing worth asking. He begs to go with him, to get in the boat, to never let this person out of his sight again. And you'd expect Jesus to say yes, this is the perfect disciple, grateful, devoted, transformed, with nothing left in that town for him anyway. But Jesus tells him no. And the no is the most important thing he could have given him. Jesus says, go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And what he does with that one command is about to become the last thing anyone on that beach would have expected. Go home. Go back to the very region that just begged me to leave. Go back to the people who feared you when you were sick and will be unnerved by you now that you're well. Go back to that Gentile shore, the Decapolis, the 10 cities, and be my voice there. In a place where I have just been asked to never return, you are going to stay, and you are going to tell them what happened to you. And that's exactly what the man does. The text says he went away and began to proclaim throughout the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. Look at what just happened. Jesus is physically driven out of Gentile territory by its own people. But he doesn't leave it empty. He leaves behind a witness. He leaves the one man on that shore who knows in his own body exactly what this power can do. The region rejected the teacher, so the teacher left them a local, one of their own, to carry the story into all 10 cities. Think about who Jesus chose for that job. Not a scholar, not a priest, not one of the 12. The first person ever sent to carry the news of Jesus into Gentile lands was a naked, screaming man from a graveyard who, hours earlier, was cutting himself with stones and could not be bound with chains. That is the first missionary to the Gentiles. The most hopeless case in the region became its first evangelist. And here's the quiet payoff, the seed you can watch grow later in the Gospels. A while after this, Jesus comes back to the region of the Decapolis. Mark actually records him traveling right back through that Gentile territory where people bring him a deaf man and beg him this time to lay his hands on him and heal him. The same region that once pushed him toward the boat is now pressing in to reach him. And it goes further than one healing. Crowds gather on those eastern hills, thousands of them, so many that he feeds a multitude on the same Gentile ground where he'd once been asked to leave. What changed on that shore between the day they begged him to leave and the day they ran to meet him? The text doesn't spell it out, but somewhere in those 10 cities for months and years, one man had been going door to door telling everyone who would listen how much the Lord had done for him. The ground was seeded by the very person everyone had given up on. The town threw the seed of the gospel out of the boat, and it took root and grew back into a harvest. So let's go back to the question we started with. Why did a legion of demons beg Jesus for a herd of pigs? And now you can see it wasn't one reason. It was a stack of them. They were cornered spirits who needed a body, any body, and unclean spirits drawn to the one unclean animal on that hillside. They were fighting to stay in their own territory. And above all, they were desperate to avoid the abyss, the pit where spirits like them are chained in the dark, waiting for a judgment they know is coming and were begging not to face before the time. The pigs were their escape plan, and the deep water those pigs ran into was the one exit they never thought to fear. That's the scene the Gospels actually give you. Not a simple story about a man and some pigs, but a window into what these spirits are, what they want, what they fear, and how completely outmatched they are the moment the Son of the Most High God steps off a boat onto their shore. And here's the thought worth carrying out of this one. On that shore, everyone made a trade. The demons traded a man's torment for a herd of pigs. The town traded a miracle for their money and asked grace to leave. But one man, the least likely person in the whole region, traded a graveyard for a mission and became the first voice to carry this story to the Gentile world. Same shore, same day, same power on display. 3 completely different answers to it. That's the whole reason this channel exists. To open the book back up and read what's actually on the page, even when the truth turns out to be stranger or darker, or bigger than the version we were handed. If this changed how you see even one story, subscribe, because there's a loose thread here I can't stop pulling on. Almost everywhere else in the Gospels, when Jesus heals someone, he tells them to stay quiet and tell no one. Here, he does the exact opposite. He orders this man to go and shout it through 10 cities. Why the total reversal? The next video digs into that puzzle, the strange rule Jesus kept breaking, and the video on screen right now unpacks another mystery hiding in these same pages. Go ahead and click it. I think you'll want to know how this one ends too.